Have you ever felt like you're always one step ahead, planning for the worst, micromanaging everything just to feel okay? What if that control is actually coming from a younger part of you that's trying to keep you safe? I'm Kim Gross, and I'm the host of Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. If you are new to this podcast, thank you so much for being here and welcome. If you are wondering whether you have people pleasing or perfectionistic tendencies, I invite you to hop on over to my website where I have a quiz both for the people pleaser and the perfectionist. You can take both or you can take one. So, this quarter three, my intention is to focus more on balance, how to balance the being and the doing, how to balance our feminine and our masculine, and how to balance all parts of ourselves. As a perfectionist, whether you're recovering or you're just getting into the throes or you're just being introduced to the fact that you have perfectionistic tendencies, or maybe you've known all your life and you're just now tuning in, whatever the scenario is, one of the tendencies for a perfectionist is to go into all or nothing. And that's why I want to focus on balance. It's not about being perfectly balanced because there is no such thing. It's more like a pendulum that may initially swing from one end and then completely to the other end. Like you do all of something and then you do none of it. Eventually, you have the goal of getting the pendulum to swing from not having as far or extreme swinging from one end to the other. The goal is to come into wholeness. We want to eventually try to come into more of our wholeness, integrating all the parts of ourselves. And if you have a strong inner controller, like I do, I want to share with you where the inner controller came from, why it's here, and then how do we even begin to loosen the grip of our inner controller. So the inner controller is a protective part of you. Most likely it formed in childhood or trauma, and controlling was a way of trying to create more safety. It can show up as micromanaging, over fixing, hyper planning, perfectionism, or rigidity. Check, check, check. I have done all of those. So I really have a strong inner controller. It could show up in the mom who plans every single detail in order to avoid disappointment. So, for example, I share a story in my book, Free to Be: A Pathway to Inner Liberation, about how it used to be for me around the holidays. I used to buy gifts for 27 people. I would have to wrap over 100 gifts, decorate 3 Christmas trees. I would sometimes stand in line for hours when my kids were little to get a specific thing they asked for from Santa. And I had to make sure that I got that gift they wanted from Santa. And again, at the time, I had already been diagnosed with Sjogren's disease, which is an autoimmune disease, and I would often feel exhausted. I can remember spending hours late at night in my cold basement wrapping gifts after the kids went to bed. I had to plan and cover every single detail at the expense of my well-being to make sure that everyone was happy, that I did not disappoint anyone, aka people pleasing to the max on steroids. And thank goodness I no longer do that. I have whittled down my Christmas list to just my husband and 2 kids. The overachiever will schedule every single moment in detail just to outrun having any chaos. I literally, even as a teenager, in my journal, used to write down everything I was going to do throughout the day. Wake up, have breakfast, make my bed, have lunch, go to school, go to soccer practice, journal, and well, I didn't do meditation then, but I would just write down every single thing that I was going to do throughout the day and plan out every part of the day because it gave me a sense of control and safety. My closet was meticulous. Everything had to be color coded, matched everything. My clothes had to be all organized according to color. The reason I was so hyper vigilant about doing that is because when there was dysfunction in the household, whether my mom was having a huge argument with my grandmother, with my dad, or one of my 3 cousins who lived downstairs from us, we lived in a 2-family flat. And my mom helped my grandmother to raise them. There would often be arguments, big arguments. And in order for me to feel safe, the way that I coped was being hyper vigilant about keeping my room very organized and orderly and neat. What's the cost to all this? I could share many. I've already shared one. Having been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease is definitely a cost. Feeling exhausted, feeling overwhelmed, feeling burned out, disconnected from my true self, disconnected from my intuition, a loss of spontaneity, a loss of being present. Having to live in that kind of rigidity doesn't allow for spontaneity or flow or let's just go with it. That constant rigidity is keeping your cortisol levels high and causing chronic pain, causing disease and anxiety. And then with the anxiety or the depression, you want to numb out the pain. So then it's about over drinking, overeating, or over anything, too much of anything to numb out. So, what can one do when you find that you're listening to this episode and it's resonating and you're going ding, 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 ding? I don't want to live this way anymore. The very first step is to become aware of the pattern. You have to be able to recognize that you have an inner controller that is driving your bus. You could even, if you wanted to, give some distance and space between you and the role of inner controller or the pattern of inner controller. You could name it. You can just approach this part of you with curiosity. You could name it like something like plan or Patty or something along those, if you're one who over plans, to just give it a personality. And then be curious, is this part of you, this inner controller, anxious? Is it fearful? Is it stern? What is this part of you showing up as if you were to give it almost human-like characteristics? And then you could even have a dialogue with it in your journal. You could write down and ask the question, what are you trying to protect me from? And then really pause and listen with compassion to see what comes up. Really investigate and give this part of you an opportunity to take the stage and speak, because it's not your enemy. It might feel as if you've been kind of at war with this part of yourself, but it really has been trying to protect you for so long. It's also a very outdated pattern or program, it's no longer serving you. It's actually hindering you from having more joy, spontaneity, peace, abundance, gratitude, grace, all of those things that I often describe as when you're in a powerful state. The inner controller, for the most part, is keeping you in a primal state. Now, sometimes the inner controller can be useful. There are times when it's important to be pragmatic, or your inner controller can help you navigate certain situations, but you have to be sure it's not coming from that inner protective part. For example, I have been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, and I've been sharing frequently on the podcast that I have been struggling with health issues. I've had either a major flare up of the Sjogren's, or I just have a handful of other chronic situations going on. I've allowed these chronic health issues over the last several months to be an opportunity for my growth. It's been primal breeding ground for me to face my inner controller and do the healing work so that my inner controller, which is my little girl, really, to have permission to go and play and let me, the adult self, the adult part of me, take over and drive the bus.
Hey, it's Kim here, interrupting your regularly scheduled podcast episode to let you know about an opportunity to go deeper into this work. I invite you to head over to Amazon.com and pick up your copy of my book, Free to Be: A Pathway to Inner Liberation. If you are looking to unhook from people pleasing and perfectionistic patterns, if you're looking to have a better way of identifying your patterns and then how you can unhook so you can be free to step outside your comfort zone, free to have more meaningful relationships in your life, free to be your true self without hiding behind a mask any longer. If you desire any of this, then I encourage you to pick up your copy. And if you enjoy my book as much as I loved writing it, please go on over and leave a review on Amazon. You can leave a star review or written review. Now back to your regularly scheduled podcast episode.
And it's been a process. I am not going to lie, because there have been so many times that I felt so horrible. And there were times when I thought I was going to have to go to the hospital. I mentioned in the last episode, there were times when I thought that I had something terminal or drastic. And my inner controller, my little girl, was panicking. She was in panic mode. And the way it showed up for me was to do as much research as I could and find out all the ways I could try and heal myself. I worked with a functional medicine doctor. I went to acupuncture. I went to red light therapy. I still continue to exercise. I went on a very strict diet protocol. Like, I did all these things. Now, let me say that doing these things in and of themselves is not a bad thing. They're all good things to do. The difference was the energy that I had behind it. The energy was, I have to fix. So remember, I said in the beginning of this episode that one of the things the inner controller will do is to try to fix things, try to solve a problem and try to figure it out. That's what a codependent, controlling person does. So that was the energy that I had behind trying to do all these things. And at the end of the day, none of them were truly helping me. Then I became more frustrated, more afraid, more anxious because I couldn't control the outcome. It wasn't until I actually started to surrender. I remind myself of the serenity prayer, which I love, but forget often. God, grant me the serenity or peace to accept the things I cannot change or control. I could not change or control what was happening to my health. And the courage to change the things I could or control what I could, and the wisdom to know the difference. What could I control? Well, that's when I just stepped into this place of what is here for me to heal, what is here for me to learn. And what it really was me learning my adult self to provide safety for my inner controller, for my inner child, the part of me that has been trying to protect, the part of me that's been scared. I had to say to my inner controller as an adult, it's okay to take a step back from this role. I got this. And then I had to tell my little girl, my inner child, that no matter what was going to happen or what was happening, I would be by her side. The reason why my little girl or my inner child had such a hard time with health stuff is because, as I shared on this podcast before, and I share the story in my book, is that when I was 5 years old and I was choking on a pine needle from the tree, I literally felt that I was going to die. And I don't remember any of the adults in my life reassuring me that I was going to be okay, or even talk to me about the situation after the event was over, after I finally coughed up what was caught in my throat. No one really took the time to process that with me and tell me that I was okay, or that must have been so super scary for you. And I was 5, so I couldn't do it for myself. The adults were panicking. So my nervous system has stored that. And then from there, I've had many experiences and instances that just solidified that original trauma wound. Every time I had another experience similar to that, because I did almost die again when I gave birth to my youngest. I literally almost died. I was bleeding out on the table, and I never processed that part, that trauma either. So all of these traumas stayed stored in my body. Fast forward to all these health issues and having a chronic illness. I just didn't have it wasn't accessible for me to do the healing work. It's been gradual, and I've really come face to face with it in these last 6 months. What was not available to me before was this practice of being with my inner child and providing the safety and the comfort that was needed. That's why these situations keep reoccurring, because the universe will show us over and over and over and over again until we learn the lesson, until we heal what needs to be healed. And that's why Dr. Gabor Mate wrote a book, and there's another, The Body Keeps the Score, or The Body Knows. I get them mixed up all the time. But the main idea is that if we don't heal traumas and address the feelings and pain that we suppress, it will come out one way or another. And so that's what this last 6 months has been about for me, is to learn how to breathe and how to just go inward. And when I'm nervous or I'm anxious, to just tell my inner controller that it's okay. I've got this. And I let my adult self take over. That is how we integrate the different parts of ourselves and come into wholeness. As you begin to do the work and heal, you can soften the grip, and it'll be something that's gradual. Most likely it has been for me, at least. where I can soften, I can let my inner controller know it's okay. You can chill out, just go play. And then all of a sudden, something else will happen. My inner controller might come back online. And then I just do the process all over again. It's not about eliminating control completely, but it's about being able to use it with more intention. When you are actually using control, you can use it from a place of wisdom and not fear. And it becomes more of a tool and not a survival mechanism. Then your life begins to feel more spacious. You become less reactive and you become more aligned with your true self, which is what I use this platform for. That's the whole premise behind take off your mask. And so in this case, it would be the controller mask. Take off your mask and let your true self come forward. But sometimes, in order for you to be your true self, all of this healing work that I talk about on this podcast and in my book has to come first, or it comes in tandem. As you heal, as you peel back all the layers, you'll come into wholeness more and more. And as you come into wholeness, you naturally, organically start to be your true self again. You return home. It's not like you have to find your true self. It's not something you have to build or create. You had it. You always had it. You just have to return home to it. Balance begins when we stop fighting with our inner controller and start listening to what it's trying to tell us. Here's something for you for the week is to perhaps just think about, contemplate, or if you're a person who likes to journal like I do, you can write in your journal a response to this question. What is my inner controller afraid will happen if it lets go? What is my inner controller afraid will happen if it lets go? And I invite you, if you feel inclined to share, I would love to hear what your thoughts are on any of this. If you're on YouTube, you can leave it in the comments section because I do check that. You can always email me. And if you're on an audio platform, and my email is kim@kimgrosscoaching.com. So I would love to hear what you have to say. And if you do decide to name your inner controller, what name would you give it? You could also share that with me. What type of persona does your inner controller take on? If you found this episode to be helpful or valuable, I would love for you to pay it forward and share with someone that you think might benefit from it. If you have any comments, any questions, anything you want to add in, I would love to hear from you. I'm accessible. I'm open to feedback as long as you're nice about it and respectful. Let's together take off our masks one layer at a time and return to our true selves.
Hey, Kim Gross here. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Masks Off for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. I invite you to hop on over to my website, kimgrosscoaching.com. Right there on the front page, there's a quiz for people pleasers and perfectionists. You can find out if you have tendencies. You can also get into my newsletter where you will be given valuable content every week on different topics I share here in the podcast. And if you really did enjoy this episode, if you found it helpful, if you found it valuable, please go to, if you're on YouTube, go and subscribe. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, then I invite you to leave a review. You can even do a star review. It doesn't have to be a written review. If you know of someone who can benefit from this podcast or this particular episode, please share it with them. I'll see you next time.